Welcome to the Ed Guiding Light YouTube channel, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the material you sent us, articles, research notes, and really cut through the noise to get to the heart of it, bringing you those vital insights and sometimes surprising facts. Today, we're diving into something deeply important. We're looking at the quiet but devastating crisis of fentanyl. But maybe more profoundly, we're exploring the incredible everyday heroism that's actually emerging from its shadows. And for this deep dive, you've shared some really compelling sources. We've got an insightful piece by Dale P. that sort of reframes heroism around Fentanyl Awareness Day. We also have detailed info from the National Harm Reduction Coalition and some vital educational resources from an organization called Song for Charlie. So our mission today, it's really to unpack the insidious nature of this fentanyl crisis. We want to identify those often overlooked acts of courage that are making a genuine difference, and also understand how awareness, education, and these compassionate harm reduction strategies are building a path forward. It's about equipping you with knowledge, maybe shattering some misconceptions, and hopefully inspiring some thoughtful action. Okay, so let's open these up and start this conversation. Our starting point is this article by Dale P. It really, right off the bat, challenges our usual ideas of what a hero is, especially when we talk about something like Fentanyl Awareness Day. It mentions a courage that's, well, not about capes and headlines.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the core chilling insight from Dale P's article is how it frames fentanyl not just as powerful, but as a quiet crisis. Its lethality 50 times stronger than heroin, that's staggering enough, but it's compounded by its stealth. People are dying without even knowing they took it.
How does that happen?
Well, it's hidden. It's pressed into counterfeit pills that look exactly like, say, Xanax or Percocet. It's laced into recreational drugs like cocaine or ecstasy. Sometimes it's even mixed into substances users think are just heroin or meth. This accidental poisoning aspect is what makes it so uniquely insidious. It turns what might be experimentation or even a relapse into potentially an immediate death sentence.
Wow.
Yeah. And it totally reframes how we have to fight it, right? Because if the danger itself is hidden, how do you even begin to protect people?
And yet Dale P. points to these unsung heroes amidst this incredibly grim picture. That really resonated. These aren't the folks on the evening news, are they?
No, not usually.
So who are they? How are their actions, shifting the needle here?
You're spot on. These are ordinary people stepping into really extraordinary roles, often with no recognition, just driven by love, or maybe profound personal experience, loss even. We're talking about parents maybe reeling from losing a child who find this unimaginable strength to stand up at a school board meeting, pushing for better education or access to naloxone in schools.
Right.
Or teachers who aren't just teaching math or history anymore, but are now like hosting naloxone training sessions after school, preparing themselves to potentially save a student's life.
That's incredible responsibility.
It is. And think about the friends who just stay up all night, offering that unwavering support to someone who's struggling, someone in a really dark place. And crucially, you have people in recovery, recovering addicts who show up week after week to those meeting rooms. They're not just there for themselves anymore. They're there for the newcomer, the person who just lost a friend to fentanyl, offering that glimmer of hope, that helping hand. Their courage is just as real, just as vital as any official badge or uniform. It's that courage to face immense fear, to speak uncomfortable truths, to love someone who's struggling with active addiction without judgment, or maybe even to find the strength to walk away from a life that no longer serves them. It's this really profound, deeply personal kind of bravery.
So if this is a quiet crisis fought by these unsung heroes, what does that mean for us? For the person listening right now, Dale P. really emphasizes that awareness saves lives.
Yeah.
How does education arm people? How do these small daily acts become part of a bigger, compassionate solution?
Well, education is absolutely critical. It's fundamental because it gives people actual actionable tools. It's about knowing the signs of an overdose. What does it look like? It's about understanding the immediate danger of counterfeit pills that one pill can kill. And maybe most importantly, it's about empowering people to seek help, to seek treatment and support without feeling that shame.
Removing that stigma.
Exactly. So on Fentanyl Awareness Day, yes, we remember the lives tragically lost, but we also honor them by choosing action over apathy. And that action can look like a lot of things. It means actively sharing reliable, life-saving resources online or with friends. It means having those difficult but totally essential conversations with our kids about these new dangers that just weren't around when we were young.
It's a different world.
It really is. It also means carrying naloxone. Narcan, that nasal spray that can literally reverse an opioid overdose in minutes. It's easy to get in many places now. And it means supporting recovery in all its forms, not just demanding abstinence, but supporting that long, often difficult, but always worthwhile road of healing that follows addiction.
So heroism isn't just one big act.
Not at all. In this context, heroism is more like a daily decision. It's these seemingly small acts of love, of vigilance, of telling the truth even when it's hard, that create these powerful ripples of change. They genuinely save lives and help build a more compassionate community around this issue.
Okay. Building on that idea of awareness and education, our next insight comes from Song for Charlie. They really zero in on a critical group. Young people, specifically Gen Z, tell us about their initiative, Real Talk About Fake Pills.
Yeah, Song for Charlie's work is so incredibly important because it tackles head-on the reality that illicit fentanyl is just dominating the drug landscape now.
Yeah.
And tragically, it's causing record numbers of drug deaths, especially among Gen Z youth. Their approach centers around this really powerful 20-minute film, Real Talk About Fake Pills. It uses real stories, shares expert insights, all designed to help teens make safer, more informed choices.
And why is that focus so critical right now?
It's critical because the whole drug landscape has fundamentally shifted. Synthetic chemicals like fentanyl are just way more profitable for illicit manufacturers than traditional plant-based drugs ever were. So that's why we're seeing fentanyl pressed into these fake prescription pills. They're made to look exactly like real Xanax, Percocet, oxycodone. They're incredibly deceptive. And it's also being found, often without the user having any clue, in things like cocaine, ecstasy, even heroin and meth. This accidental poisoning is what makes it so deadly, especially for young people who might just be experimenting, thinking they know what they're taking.
And the human cost, the devastating impact, is really brought home by the story of Charlie himself, isn't it? Puts a face to these awful statistics.
It really does. Charlie Turnan, he was a bright 22-year-old college senior. He died back in 2020. He took what he thought was a regular Percocet pill, maybe for pain or recreation. We don't know the specifics. But it wasn't Percocet. It was entirely made of illicit fentanyl. And he died.
Just like that.
Just like that. His story is just this incredibly poignant illustration of why fentanyl is now involved in a staggering 79% of drug deaths among Gen Z. That's higher than any other age group.
79%. That's almost unbelievable.
It's a shocking statistic. It really underscores the immediate widespread danger facing our youth today. But Song for Charlie isn't just about raising alarm bells. They're actively promoting peer-to-peer fentanyl education for teens.
So teens teaching teens.
Exactly. Empowering young people to share this critical, life-saving information directly with their friends, their classmates. They trust each other, And they also offer something called the New Drug Talk for Families. It's an accessible online course for parents, caregivers, anyone who cares for young people. It gives them practical tools and, importantly, the confidence to have constructive, compassionate conversations about this really complex and dangerous new chemical drug landscape with their kids.
That sounds incredibly valuable for parents who might feel lost about how to even start that conversation.
It really is. It gives them a framework.
Okay, so individual awareness, peer-to-peer education, family conversations, those are all powerful tools. But the sheer scale of this crisis, it suggests we also need broader, maybe systemic responses, right? And this is where our next source, the National Harm Reduction Coalition, comes in. They talk about a different approach, something called harm reduction. What exactly is that, and why is it seen as so vital here?
Right, connecting this to the bigger picture, the National Harm Reduction Coalition offers this crucial systemic insight. They argue that effective solutions have to be built with and for people who use drugs, not just imposed on them.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
Well, they define themselves as a nationwide advocate and ally. They focus on building evidence-based strategies that are rooted in respect and dignity for the individual. Their commitment is to bring these solutions to scale. Make them widespread. They focus on building the harm reduction movement itself, infusing it with principles of racial justice, recognizing that drug policies have disproportionately harmed communities of color. Their goals include ending the overdose epidemic and expanding access to critical tools like sterile syringes.
Sounds like a philosophy as much as a set of actions.
It really is. They actually describe their work as a catalyst for love, justice, community, and connection. Their vision is for a world that's healing from harms, that's free from judgment, and built on equity for everyone. This approach recognizes that the crisis is deeply human, and so the solutions must be deeply compassionate.
You mentioned over 100,000 overdose deaths last year. That number is just staggering. It makes it clear this is life and death, like the coalition says. So what specific practical tools do they highlight? What saves lives right now?
They emphasize tools aimed directly at preventing those fatal overdose deaths.
Mm.
The most notable one is getting naloxone again, Narcan, into the hands of people who use drugs, and also their friends, families, the communities around them. As Kristen Marshall from the coalition powerfully puts it, this is about people who use drugs saving each other, which really underscores the importance of community, of immediate, on-the-ground response by the people most affected.
Empowering the community itself.
Exactly. They also champion expanding syringe access programs, sometimes called needle exchanges. When people who inject drugs don't have safe, sterile supplies, they face these unnecessary and severe risks of getting infectious diseases like HIV and hepatitis C. Syringe access programs dramatically reduce that risk by as much as 50%. But just as importantly, they offer a vital connection point.
A connection point. How so?
Well, these programs often become a bridge. They connect people who might be quite marginalized to other essential resources, things like housing support, basic health care, wound care, and crucially, access to drug treatment options if and when they're ready. They meet people where they are without judgment and provide those pathways to broader support.
So it sounds like a much broader, more holistic approach than just focusing on, say, getting someone into rehab immediately or demanding abstinence. What are the big challenges they face trying to implement this kind of strategy?
Oh, the challenges are huge. Their work involves immense dedication. The National Harm Reduction Coalition, for instance, provides thousands of hours of training every single year. They help hundreds of organizations across the U.S. implement these vital harm reduction practices effectively and safely. They also work relentlessly through advocacy lobbying, education, trying to change policies that actively harm people who use drugs. Things like drug paraphernalia laws that make it illegal to carry syringes, or policies that block access to medication-assisted treatment. They recognize that these systemic barriers often make the crisis worse.
Can you give examples of their initiatives?
Sure. They point to things like their COVID-19 response, how they had to quickly adapt during the pandemic to make sure people still had access to naloxone and clean supplies when everything was shutting down. They have a faith and harm reduction program, which is really interesting, bringing these compassionate, community-based solutions into faith organizations, bridging that gap. And initiatives like Hep Connect, which directly tackles the alarming rise of hepatitis C linked to injection drug use, particularly in regions like Greater Appalachia. All these diverse efforts, they really show harm reduction as this active, living force for change. And it's deeply rooted, they emphasize, in the creativity, the power, the knowledge, and the lived experience of the community they serve. It's about empowering those most affected to be absolutely central to finding the solutions.
Wow. This deep dive, it's really shown us so many facets of the fentanyl crisis, hasn't it? From those hidden dangers we started with to the incredible resilience and these proactive steps being taken both by individuals and at a larger systemic level. We've seen how heroism gets powerfully redefined by just everyday acts of courage and compassion. We've seen how critical education is, especially for empowering young people and families with knowledge that can literally save lives. And we've explored how this broader harm reduction movement offers concrete, non-judgmental, and deeply compassionate solutions that meet people where they are.
It really does underline the immense power of knowledge, doesn't it? But not just knowing something. It's about that knowledge being understood and then actively applied. Whether it's, one person making that brave choice to carry naloxone, or a parent having that really difficult but honest conversation with their child about fake pills, or an organization pushing hard for essential policy. Change every single act, whether it feels big or small. It contributes to this larger tapestry of support, of survival, and ultimately of profound healing. The sources we looked at clearly show this isn't a fight one person or group can win alone. It's a collective effort to build a community that's more informed, more empathetic, and at the end of the day, just more compassionate.
So for you, our listener, maybe consider this. In a world that's just flooded with information, sometimes overwhelming information, how can embracing curiosity, really seeking to understand even incredibly tough, uncomfortable topics like the fentanyl crisis, how can that empower you? How can it empower you to contribute right where you are to a more informed and compassionate community? Think about how even those seemingly smallest acts, sharing accurate information, offering support without judgment, just being aware how those can ripple outwards, how they can help transform that quiet despair we talked about into collective strength and into genuine shared healing. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Remember to visit us at www.agl911.com for more products and information related to safety